The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out of your day here today. Uncharted times right now, so I do hope that everybody is with their family and their friends, everybody's safe and healthy as we kind of go through some uncharted territory, like I just said. Today, we're here to discuss why connected TV really is fundamental to your marketing strategy, especially now. It might seem kind of odd to say especially now right now, but I think there are some really interesting things that we'll be discussing. This was a topic that we had actually been planning prior to the coronavirus pandemic, just given how connected TV projections had really increased so significantly in recent years. But now, of course, with these recent events, the early read is honestly that this is even more appropriate for a variety of reasons that we'll spend the majority of this hour really getting into.
Hey,
So,
Joe, pardon. This is your admin person. I can't see your screen. Is there a button you need to click to hit that?
oh, thank you, Bob. Let's see. How's that?
There we go. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Didn't miss much. Right now, my name is Joe Jose. I'm the VP of Sales and Biz Dev here at Adtaxi. I've been with the company for about 9 years or so in a variety of different roles, supporting our teams across the country at Adtaxi, as well as our affiliate partners across the US, Europe, and Canada. But most recently, honestly, I've been really building out our connected TV offering and capabilities, which have really evolved quite a bit over the past 2 years. So please know that if you do have questions, I'd encourage you to chat them into the box there. If we have time at the end, we will get back to them. I do think I'll go pretty close to the hour here, of course. But if for whatever reason we can't get to them, we'll certainly follow up with an email and make sure that we've got all those FAQs covered as we send that back out to you guys. So like I said, right now we really are in uncharted territory. I think, while there have been recessions and just natural disasters of all types and scale in the past, this fluidity right now that with which things are changing really is kind of unprecedented. I think, it's safe to say that we can kind of expect the unexpected as we navigate these waters. It's probably really the only guarantee right now. But hopefully we can aim to find the positives or the silver linings in all of this, which is honestly why I'm excited to speak to you today about connected TV. Hopefully, I'm sure we've got all kinds of different businesses and industries on the webinar here today, but hopefully, hopefully you're able to take something away from that, whether that be, applying to a strategy here and now because your business is able to thrive given increased exposure, which certain industries certainly will be able to, or if it's just to make a mental note for when we come out the other side, which, of course, we know that will. But there's one thing that I do think, which is that our world will probably look a lot different coming out of this and how we went into it. And as marketers, honestly, I think this will be especially true for connected TV. So looking at today's agenda, we'll start off just doing a brief refresher on what is connected TV and what are the different devices that can be included in a connected TV strategy. This is really just to kind of set a benchmark, so we won't spend a ton of time there. But then after that, we'll discuss how connected TV was really already a hot topic prior to all of this. Before then, of course, discussing how connected TV has actually grown in light of coronavirus and COVID-19 and everything that comes with it, which of course brings many added benefits to advertisers. From there, we'll frame all of this in just the context of how certain industries can properly leverage the platform, and then we'll just wrap it all up by defining what our strategic approach could be and just really dig into what attribution looks like within connected TV before closing it out with some final thoughts here. So first things first, right? What is connected TV? Connected TV really it's similar in look and feel. It's that ability to watch, the largest screen in a household, although rather than accessing, that TV content and advertising through, over the air or through a cable, it's actually coming through the internet. And so I think, probably most people are familiar with a true smart TV. These days, if you go ahead and buy the $150 TV from Target, or you buy the $4,000 or $5,000 top of the line 8K, QLED TV, in most scenarios, right, they're all going to come with smart TV capabilities, this connected TV functioning. There are other ways to access this are are really through, a stick, which is kind of a plug and play. People are probably most familiar with Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire Sticks, Roku's, those kinds of things, Apple TV. And then lastly, of course, our console. So, an ability to plug in an Xbox or a PlayStation, and of course, be able to access our favorite streaming in those manners as well. But it's not just, defined to those types of platforms. Of course, you've got those, but you also have these what are called OTT devices, over-the-top devices, as well as full episode players, which are, abbreviated here as FEP. And those are basically other devices in which you're able to watch premium long format content, across your smartphone, your tablet, your desktop computer, whatever it might be. I just want to, call it one delineation, which is obviously you can watch pre-roll video and YouTube videos and ads and whatnot on those smartphones and laptops and desktops, et cetera, as well. Just know that pre-roll, that type of inventory, pre-roll, YouTube, et cetera, is different from the type of inventory that I'm discussing here today. I'm really only focused on long format premium content, which then of course can be watched across all of these devices. Now, I'm almost going to contradict myself because here I am talking about all these platforms and all these different devices, and yet I would say it's not even about that platform or device, and it's really about the audience's viewing habits. And what I mean by this is that in 2020, here we are today, people are digesting and viewing video content wherever they go, whenever they want, kind of in their own time. People are watching it on the buses or in the subway or watching it in their bed on their smartphone before they go to sleep. There's probably people who are guilty of watching it on the toilet, too. And I say that tongue in cheek, but really that is kind of what we're trying to hone in on, is that these habitual cord cutters and cord nevers are accustomed to watching content wherever they are. And so as advertisers, then it's our job and our responsibility to make sure that we are serving our ads and getting our message to the right audiences on whichever devices that they're leveraging. So just know it's not so much about the platforms, but really it's about the habits and the audience's viewing behaviors. So, really while I've been working on kind of developing our connected TV offering for the past 2 years or so, I think, a couple things have really come and become apparent, right? And one is that media buyers and decision makers, they're consistently asking about connected TV. They're asking about how it's evolving. They are trying to digest some of the misinformation that's out there. People throw around terms like OTT and CTV and addressable TV and advanced TV pretty loosely, so trying to get clarity around that, and whether or not they should just include it in their strategies. And then of course the second piece is that connected TV has, the growth around it has consistently accelerated beyond its projections. I remember doing a webinar on this topic a few years back, and an eMarketer at the time had actually revised its 5-year projection, so its 5-year outlook, within 6 months of publishing them. And that was because the platform was already accelerating well beyond what they initially expected, even for that year alone. And this, of course, this occurred in 2018. It also occurred in 2019. So the key here, like one term you'll hear me say a few times, is really acceleration, right? And 2020 is really no different. Before or after this coronavirus outbreak, connected TV is really proving to be that reliable digital platform that continues to grow and exceed kind of our expectations in terms of that growth and acceleration. So I mentioned eMarketer a few times, and let's start there. Looking at this recent eMarketer chart on the left here, it's a report from July 2019. The gap between pay TV viewership and non-pay TV viewership in US households, it's closing, right? You can see how it's converging, those two lines between the red and the black right there. So they forecast that by 2023, there's going to be about 56 million households in the US that'll either be cord cutters or cord nevers, which means that they'll be getting their video entertainment or just their video content, TV type content, right, through a digital package as opposed to a pay TV type package. And just know when I say cord nevers, cord never is defined as a person who cut the cord 5 or more years ago. That's the cutoff in that term of delineation. So by comparison, though, for pay TV, about 73 million households will have pay TV by 2023. And so these trends are diverging, right? And while cord cutting isn't anything exactly new, it really has accelerated as the number of streaming options has proliferated, giving users more and more options should they choose to drop their, increasingly expensive TV packages. So trends are one thing, but what I think and what I'm shocked by really is just the delta that we see actually in ad spend in light of these trends. I just mentioned that the gap in US households between connected TV or between pay TV and non-pay TV, if you will, is closing, and yet look at the difference in ad spend for both platforms, right? So connected TV is certainly on the rise. That's the trend that we're seeing, but it has just under $7 billion in national ad spend. And yet linear TV, which is declining, has a $44 billion ad spend. And of course, there's all kinds of different factors that really go into this, of course. Part of it's likely because pay TV requires or relies on kind of broad spending so that you can reach target audiences across networks and channels that index highly for them. But honestly, I think there's a real opportunity here. If traditional TV advertisers, if they're looking to maintain that reach and that frequency and that saturation that they are accustomed to receiving from their campaigns for the past 10, 20, 30 years, well, they now need to include connected TV in that strategy. They just won't be able to have those same types of reach and frequency that they're used to seeing. Beyond that, right, the digital advertisers, they can see the consistency of, targeting on the front end and then some of the metrics on the back end and how this could be a really good opportunity to leverage, the largest screen in a household as part of a digital and overarching omnichannel digital strategy. And so I think, because of that ability for better targeting and that ability to leverage retargeting and then show attribution and conversions and everything on the back end, I think for either traditional or digital advertisers, it really becomes kind of a no-brainer to at least consider this as an opportunity. And I honestly, I expect that we'll quickly see that this ad spend gap starts to close, similar to what these trends in adoption are starting to see here as well, as the savviest of media buyers really start to jump in on this. So at that point then, right, it becomes this game of catch up, right, between the number of streaming adoption or the amount of streaming adoption and then the advertisers who are trying to capitalize on it. It's a game of catch up. Our partners at the Trade Desk, they shared that there was a 900% increase in available impressions across connected TV, OTT, and full episode players inventory over the past calendar year. And keep in mind, this was prior to these figures further ballooning, which we'll talk about in a second, due to the coronavirus and more people sheltering at home and spending time at home and just, of course, watching more TV at home. And so with the number then of connected TV households growing in the US, it follows suit then that the overall supply of inventory has also grown, which then provides some more opportunities for increased reach, frequency, better targeting, and we'll spend a lot of time kind of dissecting some of this. So if I can kind of pull myself out of some of the gravity surrounding the situation and the news cycle and all that stuff and really focus on connected TV right now, I think this is such an interesting case study just from a connected TV and almost like a media landscape perspective. As I mentioned earlier, we were already planning on having a webinar on this topic of connected TV prior to the outbreak, but just given that it was so on trend and people had been asking for it. But now, with so many more people working from home, streaming is on that rise, and that 900% increase in impressions, it's just going to grow more. And I think it's also shifting behaviors and business models. It'll be interesting to see which of these behaviors end up sticking for the long term, or which of them are a little bit more elastic and start to snap back kind of to how they were. But honestly, what we're seeing in the TV landscape is that this is playing out in front of us kind of in real time. For instance, right, movie theaters, movies that had been scheduled to go into theaters, now they're going direct to on-demand rentals. In the absence of live sports, ESPN, they're actually moving up content, right? People probably saw the news about that Michael Jordan docuseries that's going to be moved up to later this month because of this, right? So models and behaviors are truly changing, and our world is essentially adapting, I think, in real time, which, then I expect that consumers will start to have this realization that they can get the same content that they're used to with, pay TV on these connected TV devices, through streaming services like YouTube TV Hulu TV or Sling TV. And then couple this, of course, with the lower costs that those have of about 35 or 40 bucks a month, no locked-in contracts that comes with those streaming services, no headaches in dealing with the the internet or the cable providers, and then an ability to have access to live sports, which has historically been the key driver of people remaining with pay TV. That media landscape, I keep referring to this, but that media landscape might look really different coming out of this than when we went into it, right? So in this next section, I just want to really dive into what we as marketers can expect as a result of all this increased supply for now, and then of course how that might trickle into the future. And then let's of course highlight a few businesses that can kind of take advantage of some of these benefits as well. So these two charts right here, they're not like for like examples, but they are two times in recent memory where people were largely homebound due to extenuating circumstances. You have 2016's snowpocalypse in New York City. You've got 2017's Hurricane Harvey that took place in Houston. And so whether it be more people tuning into the news or just keeping themselves busy while remaining isolated and remaining at home for days on end, that total TV usage increased by 45% and 56% respectively for these two crises. Now just keep in mind, right, this total TV usage, so that this does include traditional and pay TV in there, but we were able to pull out the statistic, the subset of connected TV, and connected TV during this time also increased by 61%. As these shelter-at-home designations continue, and as people are more mindful of personal budgets, and then of course the lower costs that come with streaming services as opposed to locked-in contracts with these cable providers, I think that this 61% that was experienced during these crises will be dwarfed by kind of what we're seeing here and now. I've mentioned a few times, right, that the conversation, I keep saying that conversation around supply and demand, I want to focus on this snapshot in time because I think there's some really interesting insights. Given that connected TV it's a programmatic product, the economics of the situation presents some really interesting opportunities that we'll just kind of dig into right here. So this chart right here, SpotX published some details, around ad spend by category in recent weeks, really tied to kind of the outbreak of the coronavirus. And as you can see, of course, as would make sense, some industries are certainly faring better than others. Brick and mortar, retail, travel, automotive, which isn't listed here, but they're all down. While careers, and online services, they're showing the most growth in week-over-week spend. And so with overall streaming being up, by extension, so is the available ad inventory. And with, of course, with inventory being up, yet with many of the traditional heavy spenders in connected TV pausing or canceling, which a lot of those heavy spenders are, retail and automotive and travel, there's this huge opportunity gap for kind of the rest of us, if you will. So, what does that mean, right? And just to kind of give you a peek behind the curtain, our ops teams, we pulled some information from our DSP to show you how both the BT, the behavioral targeting spend availability, and the retargeting spend availability are growing significantly in recent weeks. So of course, these charts look a little rudimentary, right? But I just had to strip the scales just to kind of be mindful of privacy and proprietary information here. But the eyeball test here speaks to itself, and I'm gonna dig into this. This is where we can really do some interesting things with our prospecting and our retargeting strategies. And I'll spend a bunch of time talking about exactly what those look like and how we can create really interesting strategies for both of those. But let's start with the BT chart. So the chart on the left here. With more available inventory, just again, by virtue of more people streaming and then fewer competition, fewer advertisers in the space, we can now focus on driving more granular audience targeting for our prospecting or these awareness campaigns. So similarly, there might be more increased opportunity for more granular geo-targeting. So we've got more people watching, we've got more inventory available. So now we can try to refine our target audience parameters, or we can try to more granularly refine our geo-targeting parameters. So perhaps some areas that had previously been only able to be reached by, say, DMA-wide type of targeting, now we can maybe perhaps focus more on clusters of zip codes. But essentially what you see is this flat line on kind of the left-hand side of this, if you're able to see my mouse, this flat line was essentially showing that we were limited in our ability to bid on inventory against these audiences. But now with that ballooning to the tune of a 12x increase over what that baseline had been, now we're able to more easily and more readily available target these folks at a more granular level on kind of the front prospecting end. Now shifting to the retargeting side of it, right? Again, we've been limited by that available spend for these low funnel audiences. So retargeting is going to be much more low funnel because they've already, been on your website and already interacted with, content on your web pages. But inventory, right, has increased, and so has that potential spend. And we're seeing a lift of about 100% increase from prior to now with this coronavirus outbreak. And so as a result, we're actually able to hit more of a lower funnel, more in-market audience more regularly and with further segmentation, just given that increase of inventory and that decrease in the competition. So industries, who had made heavy use of retargeting, like automotive and retail and a few others, since they've paused or canceled their campaigns, there's not as much competition for these audiences. So retargeting, which is typically a key driver of conversions for any strategy, now we can be even more regimented in that space to deliver opportunities for our clients. Now, it's not lost on me, right, that conversations around supply and demand and economics and all that, we're marketers, so it's probably not the most riveting for us. But to understand this concept, I just want to be crystal clear, to understand this concept, it really does put a spotlight on the opportunity for the businesses that can actually thrive or succeed at this time. So let's go ahead and just talk about a few of those industries. I can't spend a ton of time here just because I need to be mindful of the time that's allotted for this. But let's talk about a few of these. America does, we tend to come together in a crisis, so kind of similar to post 9/11. Charitable giving is, it's on the increase as America starts to take care of its less fortunate. Pharmaceuticals and health supplies are doing well. Streaming services, appropriately for today's topic, they're up over 100%. Packaging and shipping supplies are up as a business because as businesses that had other businesses that had previously relied on other people picking it up or shopping in store are making use of packaging and shipping. Finance, accounting services, they're up as businesses attempt to navigate the financial impacts of COVID and the coronavirus, especially given kind of the news around the stimulus bills and everything that comes with it. Now, looking at some of these question marks, right? I talked about how brick and mortar retail was down and automotive was down. Well, furniture is statistically flat, but the appliances are up. So one of my colleagues made a joke that perhaps this is the time, right, where people are realizing that they need to make meals at home and they recognize that their oven is broken or something like that. Dealerships are struggling right now as sales have either skeleton crews or in some instances are considered non-essential, but maintenance and repair at dealerships are up 43%. And who knows, we talked about how this might be the catalyst for change in some areas. Well, perhaps digital retailing with its virtual test drives and virtual showrooming and one-click buys and all those kinds of things, maybe that's going to start to take off here and in kind of this new world. Real estate, of course, to kind of round it out, it's in flux, but moving and relocation is up substantially. So in light of the supply and demand topics that I just mentioned, connected TV can be that really effective medium in driving new messaging. And I think messaging becomes key here as people point to solidarity and unity and making really valid points about how their industry is changing in light of stimulus bills and other outside factors. So for instance, right, this could be a great opportunity for banks or financial institutions to deliver messages around mortgage or loan deferments. Healthcare and fitness type businesses could share details around perhaps telehealth or in-home workouts. My wife is a speech pathologist, and she has actually where they typically see people, see their client, their caseload in, at the clinic itself. But most recently, they've had to move to telehealth because of shelter-at-home policies. And interestingly enough, they're growing in this space because some schools where parents relied on the schools for these outside resources, these special needs resources, et cetera. Well, they're maybe not offering it to the same ability that they had previously been able to when schools were open. So a lot of those students with special needs and articulation issues and all these things, they're now coming to my wife's telehealth practice. So just really interesting opportunities if we can leverage the messaging capabilities within connected TV as our businesses start to evolve, really during this time. So connected TV's format, right? It's honestly, it's excuse me, it's its greatest blessing as well as its greatest curse. As a platform, it uses sight and sound and motion to deliver that emotional message and really invoke empathy. But the format itself is also, like I said, it's kind of its biggest barrier to entry. The fact is that typically it requires production. A lot of times that requires on-site production, of course, and whether that just isn't a priority for your business or perhaps it's too cost prohibitive, those can be barriers to people jumping into kind of the connected TV foray. So there's two options I think that present themselves right now. The first is that if you have access to a current asset that you've used for TV or pre-roll or something like that, you can simply work with a production company to voice over the areas where people aren't seen talking. That might be a good opportunity to use some type of cost-effective way of an asset that you already have to repurpose for today's messaging here and now. Or perhaps you want to build something new or don't have something to fall back on. I want to show you really quickly that Adtaxi actually has a capability to essentially create a montage, a video montage asset that makes use of existing images or previous footage and applies a voiceover to it. And we will be sending a follow-up for FAQs and content, and so we'll also have a link for this that you can see on your own time. But I do want to at least take a second to try to click over this and show you guys what that can look like.
Undergraduate students in the Geosciences program at Idaho State University College of Science and Engineering are currently involved in 3 NASA research projects. Contact us for more information on our Geosciences program.
So obviously that's a 15-second spot, and we've got 30-second options as well as 60-second options. But if that's something that you think that you can make use of, I just encourage you to at least reach out, because it's a great way to make a video asset while production is no longer available. And on top of it, it does have all this type of resolution and specs that would make it look really good on the largest screen in a house. So now as I bring this back up, and again, like I said, we'll send out a link so that you have access to that to watch on your own time. I had to pull out my headphones there to try to get the audio, so I'm sure that wasn't the best recording there for you guys to be able to access. So at that point, or at this point, we've talked about, what is connected TV? What are the different platforms that should be included in the connected TV strategy? We talked about how it was already trending even prior to the coronavirus outbreak, but even now, there's really big pockets of opportunity for the right businesses to detail their evolving message as we kind of navigate this space. So the one thing I want to bring to your attention now is, as we pivot this conversation, is to really dive into what the channel strategy can be. And quite honestly, these days, it's all about attribution. Connected TV, it's a digital product, and yet for some reason over the past few years, decision maker, whether it be kind of just a limitation of the technology, but decision makers and media buyers have become accustomed to purchasing connected TV and only measuring it by completed views, or measuring it by frequency, or measuring it by impressions. And quite honestly, I think that those days should be over. Now we are able to utilize connected TV as a platform and have it have the exact same alignment towards the conversion goals that we're accustomed to seeing with display campaigns, social campaigns, search campaigns, etc. We can leverage retargeting. we can map it all the way down to conversions. And so when I say that it's all about attribution, it's because we're at the time that, you know, connected TV is on a level playing field with all the other digital platforms that are out there. So I want to spend some time showing, you know, how Adtaxi has navigated this, you know, and this will be similar to what some competitors have out there, and it'll be different from what other competitors have out there. But I at least want to walk you through our logic so that you can see how it may or may make sense for, you know, your business moving forward. So first and foremost, as we kind of defined our approach within connected TV, you know, it really boils down to 4 things. The first is that our connected TV strategy really is both a simultaneous prospecting and retargeting strategy that maximizes conversions. You know, that's like what, 8 words right there, but there's a lot of information in it, and you know, the devil's really in the details. So many people are accustomed to thinking about TV as being only this branding tool, only this awareness tool, and that if they want to do any kind of mid-funnel or low-funnel activity, then TV is not the product for them. And quite honestly, these days, because we're able to show how people come to a website, we're able to account for the number of engagements, we're able to account for the number of conversions, all tied to a connected TV strategy. We're able to leverage retargeting to nurture people through that process. It becomes now a full funnel product. It's not simply just awareness. It can drive education, it can drive consideration, and it can drive conversion. And I'll spend a lot of time kind of detailing this out in the next couple of minutes here as well. The second piece that we you know, live by with our strategy is that, you know, it really is a platform agnostic blend of inventory, right? Making use of the connected TV type inventory that I mentioned at the top of this webinar, those OTT devices, as well as full episode players to better reach those cord cutters. Again, I kind of bring this back to the fact that it's all about the viewing habits rather than it being about the platforms themselves. So if a person is going to watch the 65-inch TV in their basement, or they're going to watch the same content on their smartphone at 2 o'clock in the morning while they're, you know, hiding under the covers, in either scenario, it makes no difference to us. They're watching premium content, so we as advertisers want to get our message to them, as long as, of course, they're the right target audience. The third piece is that we make use of multiple ad group setup to really reach and influence those audiences who are most likely to convert. And so when we think about ad groups, I think our brain naturally goes to target audiences, BT audiences, first party data, those kinds of things. And we're no different, right? That certainly is included in this. But we also have ad groups that are dedicated to live sports and cultural events. Now, of course, live sports is largely dark right now, but when they are up, we have ad groups that are dedicated specifically to those, so that we make sure that we can take advantage of that captive audience if it makes sense. Of course, that ad group is also extremely expensive, so it's the juggling act of making sure that we're not wasting too much budget there, but using clear eyes to navigate that strategy. We also have ad groups that are dedicated to Hulu TV. We have ad groups that are dedicated to premium content, and you can kind of use I guess a good rule of thumb for premium content is that if it has name recognition, whether it be the channel or the network, if it has name recognition to you, then it is most likely considered premium content. But then, of course, we also have ad groups that are dedicated to, you know, a more open exchange inventory. If we're able to convert someone on open exchange, you know, lower cost inventory rather than on live sports, well, then it makes sense for everybody, for all parties interested, because that lowers the cost per acquisition and it improves the return on ad spend for a client, which then gets us to point number 4, which is that our approach really does yield or leverage, you know, optimization strategies that find efficiencies in the process, again, to yield the best return on ad spend and the best cost per acquisition. So you'll hear me say a few times in the next couple minutes that it's one thing to measure and track conversions, but it's another thing entirely to optimize to conversions. And this is something that we've been refining really for the past 2 years to make sure that this product set, right, this TV offering aligns with our strategy across display and social and native and the other programmatic channels. So for those of you who are current clients, and if you've heard of, you know, quantum display or our quantum technology, well, our platform that we offer is actually called Quantum TV because it makes use of the exact same type of logic, albeit now in the connected TV setting, as opposed to the other platforms that you might be most accustomed to. So then what sets it apart, right? What is kind of the sizzle here? And honestly, I want to walk you through this flow because I think these three things, they really put a spotlight on exactly how we're able to do this, to show conversions and to measure attribution. So the first thing is that our connected TV campaigns allow us to understand who viewed the ad, who viewed that initial TV ad, right? And then visited your website. And this makes use, and so you might be thinking, right, well, there's a TV on my wall, but I can't go ahead and click it. If I press the screen, that's not going to do anything. The reason that this works is because we leverage two pieces of technology called cross-device attribution and view-thru tracking. And I'll spend a couple minutes on the next two slides to kind of dig into exactly what those are. But key piece here is that we're able to understand who saw the ad and then that they went to the actual website. So now that they're actually on the actual website, it's about maximizing that connection with those visitors. And that translates really into retargeting. How can we re-engage these people who are exhibiting interest in our products or our services, whatever it might be, and that becomes a really segmented retargeting strategy that we try to employ. So obviously we're able to, if a person comes to the site, we can retarget them with another connected TV ad. Ideally, it would be a different type of asset with a different type of message to avoid kind of ad fatigue. If you have an omni-channel buy where you're layering in, say, social and display as well, well, if a visit started with that connected TV view, well, of course, we can retarget them on connected TV, but we can now retarget them on social as well as display as well. And that omni-channel strategy makes a lot of sense in many situations so that you can maintain that reach and frequency and stay top of mind. The last piece I would call out with retargeting is this idea of household extension retargeting. And if you think about it, there's, with virtually every major purchase, there's the decision maker and there's an influencer or a number of influencers. This is really trying to speak to that, right? Household extension retargeting is trying to speak to that. I might be the person that saw the ad and went to the dealership's website to kind of look at options, different models for buying a car. But my wife might be the one who's going to say, no, not that size or not that color or no, not those, not that trim level. And so as a result, it might make sense to retarget to my wife, even though she never actually visited the advertiser's website. Household extension is an ability to reach the other people in my house, either with the same message or a tailored message specific to what might interest that audience the most. And then lastly, it's really accounting for site visitor behavior, right? So we know a person has viewed the ad, we know that person has visited the website, we've retargeted that person to re-engage and stay top of mind. And now once that person converts, we want to account and show attribution for that behavior. And then of course, make sure that we're optimizing, as I mentioned in the previous slide, so that we're finding efficiencies to yield the best cost per acquisition and yield the best return on ad spend. And you might see a little piece of text in there that talks about measuring online and offline brick and mortar conversions. And I'll spend a second kind of talking about that as I dive into these next two topics. So to understand then how a person has seen an ad and visited our site and show that attribution, I mentioned a second ago that it takes those two pieces of technology, at least for us it does. And that first piece I want to dig into is called view-thru tracking. So I'm sure everybody knows clicks and click-throughs, right? A person sees an ad, they click on it, and then that click is of course recorded and also contributes to click-through rate. Well, this is the same logic, it just takes the click out of the equation. A person sees the ad, does not click on it, or in this case in connected TV, cannot click on it because it's a non-clickable source. But then let's say at that very next second, they open up their laptop or their smartphone or their iPad and they visit that advertiser's website. Well, that now has been now that person has seen the ad, did not click on it, and visited the advertiser's site. It could be, I mentioned it could be that very next second. It could perhaps be over a person's lunch break or later that evening when they're sitting with their spouse having dinner, or it could be over the weekend as they start to compile their honey-do list and knock out the priorities on that list. But in either scenario, a person saw the ad, didn't click on it, and then ultimately visited the advertiser's website. We can track that because of this view-thru technology. Now, the second piece of this I mentioned is cross-device attribution. This image that you see here, it's a really basic looking version of what would be called the household graph. And essentially all devices in a household, they access the internet in a house via the same wireless router. Some might have a modem router combo, some houses might have a modem and then a separate router. But in either scenario, people are typically accessing the internet with all their devices through that router. So I have a smartphone, I have an iPad, I have my laptop, and currently I have my work laptop at home. My wife has the same number of devices as well. And what's interesting is that, because we're able to map out this graph, we can essentially understand that all these devices in a household belong to me or belong to the consumer, right? So when a person then sees a connected TV ad, can't click on it and applies that view-through logic, right? By now visiting the advertiser's website on their smartphone or their iPad, well, since we know that that smartphone or iPad is accessing the internet the same way that my connected TV or smart TV on my wall is accessing the internet, now we can start to connect the dots here and show that attribution that this visit on my phone is tied to that initial connected TV ad, right? And that's how we're able to start to measure that attribution. And a second ago, I mentioned how, it also applies to offline conversions. Well, the same logic of a person seeing a connected TV ad and not being able to click on it, but now that smartphone that's in their pocket or that's in their purse enters the geofenced radius of a brick and mortar location. And there's a lot of kind of logic parameters that we have to apply here as well. But for time's sake, that smartphone enters that geofenced radius. Well, now we can start to attribute that foot traffic, that person's visit to the brick and mortar location, to that initial connected TV ad. So these two pieces of technology are how we are able to connect the dots to show that attribution, which becomes a really important piece of this digital strategy. But since it's digital, right, it does have that ability to have that front end precise targeting, right? So any connected TV strategy should employ first party data targeting. That is the holy grail of data, whether that be cookie activity on your website that we can leverage, past purchaser lists, CRM data, anything like that, right? This is your most critical information for both lifetime value as well as cross-sell and upsell opportunities. So that's definitely a place that you'd want to start. The second piece would be to incorporate lookalike modeling. Most of you are probably familiar with this, but lookalike modeling is the ability to essentially give a halo effect to your first party data. Essentially, if you have CRM data or you have past purchaser lists, let's go ahead and find people that look like those folks. That'd be a really good starting point rather than kind of just grasping at straws and starting from scratch. The third piece would be employing third-party data targeting, which I think most people are familiar with, demographics and behavioral traits and gender, income, all those kinds of things. And then lastly, retargeting. I'm sure we all understand retargeting, but I'm certainly going to spend a lot more time talking about a segmented retargeting strategy. So I feel, that a website really should be an extension of a business. It should be a useful tool that a business can leverage to make really good and informed decisions about their workflow process and their audiences and how people are converting, rather than just being some kind of must-have that doesn't really offer them any assistance. So I actually look, you might find this shocking, but I kind of look at this as almost being the most rudimentary way of how a website can work as a tool for our businesses. So let's say a person sees a connected TV ad and then they do actually come to the advertiser's website, but they visit the homepage and they just bounce, right? They're there and they're immediately off. Well, I'm not going to necessarily discount them entirely, but they certainly wouldn't be my priority, right? They're not showing any signal of intent, no propensity to purchase, and they're not really giving us anything. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of set them on the back burner a little bit. But let's go ahead and say a person saw that connected TV ad, and now they've come to the website and they're looking at the product detail pages or that vehicle description page, or maybe they're spending 2 or 3 minutes on the site digesting multiple pages of content, those kinds of things. Well, that's all trackable, and that is an engaged site visit. And quite honestly, that should be the goal of our prospecting campaigns. We want to find more people from our connected TV ads who are going to come to our website and engage, just show some type of signal of intent. And now once we have that pool of engaged visitors, well, the goal is going to be to get them to fill out a form fill, pick up the phone and give us a call, maybe visit the maps and directions pages or the contact us page, because that's that last low funnel activity prior to them coming to the brick and mortar location. And that then should be the goal of our retargeting campaigns. So the idea is to get an engaged audience, find those people, refine that process, and then take the engaged audience, retarget them, nurture them to stay top of mind, to push them to the point of ultimate conversion. And to even kind of spend a little bit more time really digging into this, I want to really break out then what those prospecting and retargeting strategies really look like. So on the left-hand side, let's start with this. This is our prospecting strategy. We're going to go ahead and we're going to throw in our first-party data. We're going to go throw in our lookalike audiences that are built off of that first-party data, and then we'll supplement with that third-party off of behavior and demo and interests and whatnot, with the goal, right, of bringing engaged visitors, people who come to the site and show us some type of signal of intent. Now, if there's not a good, if it makes sense, like we will certainly suppress out any known activity, known audiences, because the idea here is that we want to make sure that we are focusing on new eyeballs, right? We want new customer acquisition. And so as a result, any kind of known audiences, they would just be funneled into a retargeting strategy where it made sense, rather than part of this prospecting side of the campaign. And of course, on the prospecting side, we would employ frequency capping just to make sure that we're maximizing that reach and frequency that we can. But let's say now we've done that prospecting side, we have those engaged visitors, and it moves then over into our retargeting strategy. So one funnel kind of fills the other. And in this instance, with our retargeting, what we want to do is be really strategic about it. We want to segment those site visitors by value, and that value is essentially assigned by the type and the amount of engagement that they're doing on the website. So if we have an engaged, this process I'm about to walk through is 3 steps, but it could be longer than this, it could be shorter than this. This, just keep in mind, is an example. As we have these engaged visitors, we might go ahead and bid 100% of what we typically would. The idea being that sure, they're engaged, but they might not be they might not be ready to pull the trigger just yet. So we would ideally have some type of creative alignment that has generic interest and try to get them to come back. Now they come back and they're viewing the product details pages. As a result, that's a little bit further down the funnel. It's a little bit higher of a signal of intent. So we're going to bid more aggressively to the tune of maybe 150%. And this time we'll try to show them ideally some alignment with the creative of the details of those products that they viewed, maybe some type of contextual interest. And then lastly, they get to the shopping cart and they abandon. That's about as low funnel as it gets. So we're going to bid more aggressively. We might bid 200%, perhaps even more, and try to give them a creative that has maybe an enticing offer or like a client testimonial or something like that. And what we're doing in this process is we are bidding to win. We are overbidding so that we can ensure that we win that retargeted impression. And by ensuring that we win that retargeted impression, it allows us to ensure that we have the best opportunity for that person to convert with us as opposed to with a competitor. Now you might be thinking, okay, well shoot, you're talking about bidding more aggressively and jacking up those bids. Well, the idea here is that we're only doing it against those most valuable audiences. And the nature of second price auction is that we're actually only paying 1 cent over whatever that second highest price bid is. And quite honestly, since we're doing this to really focus on conversions, typically what happens is that because even though we're overbidding, these people are likely and are more likely to convert. So that conversion is really offsetting really any premium in terms of that bid. And just keep in mind also, last thing I would mention is that these are CPMs, right? So these are costs per thousand. So to do this on the individual level, it really isn't doing anything to break the bank. And the reason that we do this is because it works. I just want to show you that by focusing on engagements and driving retargets through the engagements, that's how this whole thing comes together. Here's a quick data visualization of a client that we work with. It's an automotive client, but this logic applies to all of our categories, and we use it for all of our categories. This client basically said that what they would like us to do is optimize to online price quotes, because there's a direct relationship between online price quotes and the number of car sales. The more price quotes that they had, the more cars that they sold. But we found that when we were optimizing it, we just weren't really satisfied with the numbers that we were bringing them. And that's kind of what you see to the left of this blue line. You know, the high water mark at any given point was about 4 price quotes in a given day. So we went back to the client and we said, look, we recognize that you want to increase price quotes because that increases car sales. But if we focus further up the food chain, you know, a little bit more upstream where people are actually engaging with your website and we can drive those engagements, then we think that organically the number of price quotes will increase. And then of course, by virtue in the extension, the number of car sales will increase. And there you see to the right hand of that line, just the eyeball test, right? There were we drove more VDP visits for that particular client. And then by extension, the number of price quotes also increased. So paying attention to those engagements and really nurturing a person through that process with a segmented retargeting strategy, it's become a key component in terms of how we drive our campaigns, and connected TV is able to make use of this exact strategy. So I said a few times, right, that it's one thing to track conversions, but then it's another thing to optimize to conversions. So I just want to show you how we have essentially structured our ability to do just this. So Quantum, as I mentioned, is our branded term for essentially an optimization layer that we have built on top of our campaigns that really drives, you know, dynamically shifting budget from the worst performing ad groups, audiences, networks, etc., to the best performers. And I'll just quickly walk you through this before we start to wrap up here. In this, looking at the top half, right, a campaign is set up, and for this example, we've got 5 different audience or 5 different ad groups. And we're also, just for this example, going to apply equal budget to all 5 of them. The goal of this example, right, is say to bring as many form fills as possible. So now looking at the bottom half of this chart here, or this table, once the campaign starts, right, each of those different ad groups are going to perform differently. They're going to spend differently, they're going to drive conversions differently, and you can see, right, the media spend is a little bit different for each of them. But as a result then, so is that cost per acquisition, or that cost per form fill. And if you look at the predictive line, right, the second line down here, the cost per form fill in this example was $1.66. And yet the third one, the premium live sports and cultural events ad group, had a $3.19 cost per form fill, almost double what we saw from the predictive line. Well, in this instance, what we do with our Quantum campaigns, with our Quantum TV campaign, is we start to funnel budget, we remove budget from the worst performing ad group, and we apply that outstanding budget to the top performing ad group. So as these things adapt and morph and evolve in real time, this technology is essentially making sure that we're always being as efficient with that budget, with that budget as possible, so that we can make sure that we're achieving the best cost per acquisition and the best return on ad spend for our clients. And, you know, just evaluating this, right? So I've mentioned that TV, connected TV, is kind of just the next evolution or the next addition to this technology that we've built, which was previously rolled out to social, native, display, pre-roll, you know, all the different programmatic products out there. And in every situation, right, we evaluated 9,000 campaigns. In every situation, those that applied this strategy performed better than those that did not, right? And I think, you know, it's kind of common sense, of course, right? If you're doing these optimizations in real time as opposed to waiting for month end, well, then absolutely it would make sense. But the devil's in the details, and I just wanted to show you that across all of these platforms and across our top verticals, we were able to see significant improvement by applying this technology and this strategy. Now, just to kind of wrap things up, right? Because there's been a lot of information that we've talked about, so I wanted to pull out some key details for you. You know, connected TV has really been growing significantly in recent years. Those metrics that I talked about, those e-marketer projections, they've all been outpaced by the actual results and what those predictions initially were. And the situation that's surrounding us, that we're finding ourselves in today, it's only looking to actually accelerate consumer streaming habits. And, you know, if we want to get into that economics discussion again, because more people are watching, it's actually creating more supply. And just by virtue of just the circumstances we're in right now, there's more supply and there's less competition or less demand from some of those heavy advertisers typically, which are creating really unique opportunities, both for targeting on the front end, as well as retargeting strategies and conversion attribution on the back end for businesses that are able to see success in today's day and age. Basically, right now, as we're going through all this. And so industries that can thrive today, they should be able to, they should really consider leveraging connected TV as a strategy, not only for the reasons that I just mentioned, but also to drive that message of empathy and solidarity and unity, and perhaps, revised value prop, just given some of the outside circumstances surrounding economic stimulus and the things that are coming with it. And, I also want to call out that, gone are the days, right, where connected TV is just being measured by reach and frequency and impressions and completed views. It should include prospecting. It should include retargeting. It should be that full funnel product that's really all about driving conversions and measuring attribution. So with that being said, I know we are basically right at time, and as a result, we're going to hold questions so that if you guys would like, please do submit them, and we will follow that up with an email to all attendees and all registrants that speaks to those questions. And of course, if you do have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us on our website. You can certainly reach out to me. My name again is Joe Jost. My email address is jost@adtaxi.com. And certainly, if you would like, please do reach out to your local Adtaxi rep, and they would be more than happy to provide you with information as well. So with that being said, thank you very much for your time, and please do be safe and well as we go through all this. No doubt we'll be coming out of this on the other end very soon. Thank you.